Keanu Reeves stood in the beautiful hotel lobby, his tired eyes scanning the place he had built with love and care. The golden chandeliers above shone brightly, making the polished marble floor sparkle. Fresh flowers filled the air with a soft, sweet smell. It was warm, cozy, and welcoming, at least that's what it was supposed to be. But tonight, as Keanu stood in front of the reception desk, he didn't feel welcome at all. The receptionist barely looked at him. She shook her head quickly. "Sorry, sir. No rooms available." Keanu felt a small, bitter smile creep onto his face. She didn't recognize him. She didn't know he owned this hotel. And worse, she didn't care. That was her first mistake. Keanu was exhausted. He had been traveling for weeks, filming a new movie. The cold December air outside had chilled him to the bone, and all he wanted was to rest. He wasn't asking for a fancy room or special treatment. Just a bed for the night. He looked at the receptionist again. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. The woman sighed loudly, looking irritated. She barely glanced at him again before saying, "I already told you, sir. We are full. Maybe try the little motel down the street." A few guests nearby chuckled. They had noticed Keanu's simple clothes, an old leather jacket, worn-out boots, and a slightly messy beard. To them, he didn't look like someone who could afford this hotel. Keanu tightened his grip on the strap of his leather bag. This wasn't about luxury. He didn't want a suite with a grand view. He wasn't expecting VIP treatment. He had built this hotel with a philosophy of kindness and warmth, a place where anyone could feel safe. But now, standing here being dismissed like he was nothing, he felt something else. Disappointment. Nearby, a well-dressed couple whispered to each other. They both wore expensive coats and carried fancy shopping bags. "Homeless guys always try to sneak in," the woman murmured, rolling her eyes. "Just ignore him." Keanu heard every word. His heart clenched, not for himself but for others who had been treated this way. How many people had walked into this hotel, desperate for help, only to be turned away by people like her? Slowly he nodded. "All right," he murmured. "I'll find somewhere else." Keanu turned and walked toward the exit. The cold air hit his face as he stepped outside. Snowflakes swirled around him as the city buzzed with life. But he didn't leave. Not yet. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He only needed to make one call. "Hey, it's me," he said into the phone. "Meet me at the hotel. We have a problem." Minutes later, a sleek black SUV pulled up. The door opened and out stepped a middle-aged man in a sharp gray suit. His hair was mixed with gray, and he carried himself with confidence, until he saw Keanu standing outside in the freezing cold. His face turned pale. "Mr. Reeves," the man gasped, hurrying over. "Why are you out here?" Keanu tilted his head slightly. "Apparently, I'm not welcome inside," he said coolly. The manager's eyes widened in horror. "What?" He turned and looked toward the front desk, then back at Keanu, panic clear on his face. "Who told you that?" Keanu nodded toward the receptionist inside. "Her." The manager didn't wait a second. He stormed into the lobby, his voice sharp. "Who turned away Mr. Reeves?" The receptionist, who had been chatting and laughing with the rich couple, suddenly froze. Keanu followed them inside. The air had changed. The other guests in the lobby had noticed the tension. Some had started whispering. Others gasped as realization dawned on their faces. Keanu Reeves. The man they had mocked. The man they had ignored. The owner of the hotel. The rich couple who had sneered at him just moments ago turned pale. Their eyes darted around, their arrogance melting into sheer horror. The receptionist's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. The manager turned to her, his voice full of anger. "Do you have any idea what you've done? This is the man who pays you." Keanu sighed, watching the woman's face lose all its color. He should have felt victorious. But all he felt was disappointment. "Is this how you treat people?" he asked softly, his voice calm but serious. "Anyone who doesn't look important gets turned away?" The receptionist swallowed hard. Keanu shook his head. "I built this hotel to be different. A place where people feel welcome. Not just the ones with fancy clothes and money." He glanced at the wealthy couple. Their faces burned with shame. The whole room was silent now. Then the manager cleared his throat. "This will never happen again, sir." Keanu clenched his jaw. He had every right to fire the receptionist on the spot. He could humiliate her just like she had tried to humiliate him. But that wasn't who he was. Instead, he looked into her eyes and said, "You have a choice. Learn from this, or leave." Tears welled in the woman's eyes. Keanu exhaled slowly. He was exhausted. "Can I get a room now, or am I still not welcome?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "Of course, Mr. Reeves." The guests in the lobby were still whispering. The news of what had just happened spread quickly. But Keanu didn't care. He just wanted to rest. He followed the manager to the elevator. As the doors closed, he took one last look at the receptionist, the rich couple, and the guests who had judged him too quickly. Would they remember this night? Would they change? Or would they go back to their old ways as soon as he left? The elevator moved up slowly. When the doors opened, the manager led Keanu to the presidential suite, the best room in the hotel. The windows stretched from floor to ceiling, showing the twinkling lights of the city below. It was beautiful, and yet it felt empty. Keanu placed his bag down carefully. He ran a tired hand through his dark hair. "I never asked for special treatment," he said quietly. The manager shifted uncomfortably. "I know, sir, and I'm really sorry. It's just, people judge too quickly." Keanu let out a humorless chuckle. "That they do." He turned toward the window, looking at his reflection. A man who had spent most of his life being overlooked. A man who had lost more than he had gained. A man who had learned that no matter how rich or famous you are, people only see what they want to see. The manager hesitated. "Would you like anything, sir?" Keanu shook his head. "No. Just leave me alone for a while." The manager nodded and quietly left. Keanu stood in front of the window looking at the city lights. The world kept moving. People kept judging. And Keanu Reeves? He just wanted to sleep. The room was very quiet. Keanu stood there looking out the big glass window. Below, the city was busy, cars moving, people walking, lights shining. But his mind was far away. He was thinking about a night from a long time ago. Back then he was much younger. He sat alone on a park bench in the middle of winter. He had no warm clothes, no home, no money, only a dream and the hope to keep going. Since then he had seen that same sad look in the eyes of many people. The lost, the tired, the ones nobody noticed. And tonight he saw it again. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. He looked at the screen. It was an old friend. Someone who knew him before he became famous, before people started saying his name with respect. He answered. "Keanu." The voice on the phone was warm and familiar. "Are you okay?" He didn't answer right away. Then he said softly, "I don't know." There was a pause. Then the friend asked, "What happened?" Keanu sat down in a chair and leaned his head back. He stared at the ceiling. How could he explain it? Not the hotel, not the rejection, not the heavy feeling in his heart. "People never change," he finally said. A quiet sigh came from the phone. "Maybe not all of them," the friend said gently. "But you have. And that's what matters." Keanu closed his eyes. He wasn't sure if that was true. But for tonight he let the words stay in his mind. And deep inside he hoped that tomorrow would be better. Keanu sat in the dim hotel room. The city lights twinkled in the window, reflecting in the glass. His thoughts were heavy, filled with memories that wouldn't go away. The night had been long, but the loneliness inside him felt even longer. His friend's words echoed in his mind. Maybe not all of them. But you have. And that's what matters. He wanted to believe it. He really did. But tonight, the world reminded him of something he had always known. People only saw what they wanted to see. They judged. They assumed. They walked away. The world wasn't always kind, not even to those who tried to be. His fingers touched the old bag beside him. It was the same one he had carried for years. It had been with him through everything, the additions, the heartbreaks, the losses. So many losses. His mother. His best friend. The love of his life. Their baby who never got to see the world. A deep sadness filled his heart. It never truly went away. It just hid inside him, waiting for quiet moments like this to remind him it was still there. He leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. For a moment, he let himself remember a time long ago. It had been a rainy evening. He stood outside a small apartment, shivering in the cold. His pockets were empty. His stomach hurt from hunger. He had spent the last of his money on a single cup of coffee, trying to make it last. Hollywood had been cruel. The auditions never ended. The rejections were worse. Then there was her. She had found him that night, standing under a flickering streetlight. "Keanu," she had said softly. Her voice was always warm, always kind. She was the kind of person who made the world feel softer, less harsh. He had forced a smile. Just enjoying the view. But she saw right through him. She always did. Without a word, she took his hand and led him inside. She wrapped a blanket around him and gave him a bowl of soup. He could still taste it, the warmth, the quiet love in every spoonful. "You don't have to do this alone," she had whispered that night. But in the end he had. Because life had taken her away, just like it had taken so many others he had loved. A knock at the door pulled him out of his thoughts. Keanu blinked, pushing the memories away. "Come in," he said. The door opened slowly. To his surprise, it was the hotel receptionist from earlier. Her eyes were red, and her hands twisted nervously. She stepped inside, holding a small envelope. I wanted to say sorry," she said in a shaky voice. Keanu watched her quietly and nodded, waiting for her to continue. "I judged you. I made up my mind about you without knowing the truth. And that was wrong." She swallowed hard and held out the envelope. "I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to have this." He took it and looked at the front. It was an old restaurant receipt. His eyebrows furrowed as he read the note written below it. 20 years ago, you left a $2,000 tip for a waitress who was struggling to pay for college. That waitress was my mother." Keanu's breath caught in his chest. The woman bit her lip, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "My mother never forgot what you did for her. Because of you, she finished school. She became a teacher. And because of her, I got a better life." Keanu swallowed, his chest tightening. The woman took a shaky breath. "She used to tell me stories about you. She said you were kind when no one else was. And tonight..." Her voice broke. "Tonight, I forgot that kindness. I forgot what really matters. I'm so sorry." Keanu looked at the note again. His heart felt heavy, but not in the same way as before. After a long pause, he looked up and gave her a small, tired smile. "Thank you," he said softly. The woman hesitated, then nodded. She turned to leave but stopped at the door. I hope one day the world sees you the way my mother always did." And then she was gone. Keanu sat there for a long time, staring at the note in his hands. Outside, the city kept moving. People walked, cars honked, lights flashed. The world went on. But inside that quiet hotel room, something inside him felt different. Maybe people could change. Maybe, just maybe, kindness wasn't forgotten after all. Keanu sat very still. He held the notes tightly in his hands. The words on the paper looked blurry because his mind was full of memories. These memories pulled him back to a time when kindness was the only thing he had to give. He never expected anything in return. He never asked for a thank you. But now, after so many years, he was holding proof that even a small act of kindness could spread through time, touching people in ways he never imagined. He took a deep breath and let out a long sigh. The heavy feeling in his chest, the loneliness that had stayed with him for so many years, felt a little lighter. Not gone, but lighter. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling, lost in thought. The hotel room around him felt different now. It was not just a place made of glass and concrete. It was more than that. It was a place where people met, judged, forgave, and sometimes changed. The night felt long, but sleep never came. Instead, Keanu found himself walking through the quiet halls of the hotel. His thoughts were heavy. At the far end of the lobby, he saw an old janitor mopping the floor. The man moved slowly, his back bent with age. He didn't notice Keanu until he stopped a few feet away. "Long night?" Keanu asked softly. The old man looked up, surprised. He nodded and gave a tired smile. "Always." Keanu glanced at the mop bucket, then back at the man. "How long have you worked here?" The janitor sighed and leaned on the mop handle. 15 years. I've seen all kinds of people come and go. Some good, some not so good." Keanu nodded. He understood more than he wanted to. The janitor looked at him for a moment, then smirked. "Funny thing is, I always tell the new folks, treat everyone with respect. You never know who you're talking to. Guess someone forgot to listen tonight, huh?" Keanu chuckled. "Yeah, guess so." The janitor's face softened. "But you know what? The good ones, the real ones, they always forgive. Because they know what it's like to be on the other side." Keanu stared at him. Those words sank deep into his heart. He thought about his past. The nights he had slept on benches, the people who ignored him, and the few who had truly seen him when no one else did. He reached into his pocket and pulled out some crisp $100 bills. He handed them to the janitor. "For all the long nights." The old man's eyes widened. "Oh, I can't take this." Keanu placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Yes, you can." The old man swallowed hard, his hands shaking as he took the money. "Thank you, son." Keanu just smiled. Then he turned to leave. As he walked toward the elevator, he passed the front desk. The receptionist was still there, sitting quietly, lost in thought. Their eyes met for a moment, and she gave a small, hesitant nod. Maybe she would change. Maybe she wouldn't. But tonight something had shifted. The world wasn't perfect. It never would be. But kindness, it still mattered. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Keanu stepped into the elevator. The doors slid shut with a quiet hum. As the elevator moved up, he leaned against the cool metal wall. His reflection stared back at him in the mirror, his tired eyes, the lines on his face, the weight of his past. It was all there, written in silent marks that no one else seemed to notice. He exhaled slowly and looked down at the note in his hand. It was from the receptionist's mother. His fingers trembled slightly as he touched the faded ink. A long time ago he had given away a tip without thinking about it. He had never expected to hear about it again. But now, after so many years, it had come back to him. A small reminder that kindness, even the kind no one sees, never really disappears. The elevator doors opened and he stepped into the quiet hallway. His hotel suite was waiting for him at the end of the hall. The big doors stood tall. But something made him stop. Instead of going inside, he turned and walked toward the rooftop. The cold night air touched his skin as he stepped outside. Below him, the city stretched out, full of a million tiny lights. He wrapped his arms around himself, shivering a little. But it wasn't because of the cold. It was something deeper, something that had lived inside him for years. He closed his eyes and suddenly he was not here anymore. He was back in a hospital room long ago. The steady beeping of a heart monitor filled the air. The sharp smell of medicine was everywhere. He was sitting next to a hospital bed, holding her hand. Her grip had grown weak. She was slipping away. Her bright eyes had lost their shine. Her breath was slow and tired. Yet even in her last moments she managed to smile. "Keanu," she whispered softly. He swallowed the lump in his throat. "Yeah, baby? You always take care of everyone else." Her voice was so faint. She gave his hand the smallest squeeze. "Who takes care of you?" He wanted to answer her. He wanted to tell her that she was the one who took care of him, that she was his safe place. But the words wouldn't come. They were too heavy, too painful. A tear slipped down her cheek and he gently wiped it away. He pressed his forehead against hers. "I love you," she breathed. His own tears fell then, silent and unrelenting. "I love you too." And then just like that she was gone. Keanu opened his eyes. His breath shook. The pain was still there. Still fresh. No matter how many years had passed, he had never stopped missing her. He had never stopped wondering what life would have been like if she had stayed. If their child had lived. If he had been allowed to keep even one of the people he had loved so deeply. But life had never worked that way for him. He let out a shaky breath and rubbed his hands together. The city below was still moving forward as if nothing had changed. And maybe for the world nothing had. But for him tonight was different. Because tonight, a stranger had reminded him that even the smallest act of kindness could spread through time. That even when he felt invisible, he had still mattered to someone. And maybe that was enough to keep going. Maybe that was enough to believe that love, no matter how much he had lost, was still out there, waiting to find him again. Keanu took one last look at the city, then turned and walked back inside. For the first time in a long time, he felt a little less alone. If you like this story, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below and let me know what you think. And don't forget to subscribe for more thrilling adventures, mysteries, and unforgettable moments. Your support keeps these stories alive and the creativity flowing. Thanks for watching. I can't wait to see you in the next video.